Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking what is easily one of the most mind-bending, philosophical, and frankly, unprecedented stories of space travel and stolen identity ever recorded. We're talking about the case of Captain Elara Voss. This is an astronaut who pushed the absolute limits of human exploration, only to return to an Earth she barely even recognized. We're going to explore the incredible science, the profound personal loss she experienced, and the massive geopolitical shockwaves her return triggered.
Welcome home, Captain Voss. We've been expecting you. I mean, just imagine hearing those words crackle over your comms. That was the actual radio transmission Captain Elara Voss received as her ship, the Aether, started its descent toward the Kennedy Reclamation Spaceport. It sounds polite, right? Very welcoming. But for Elara, that sentence literally sent ice down her spine. Because as far as she knew, every single person who had been expecting her should have been long dead.
Okay, let's really dive into this for a second. What happens when you return home only to find someone else has lived your life? It's the central philosophical mystery of our entire story here. Elara Voss was about to step out of her spacecraft and face a reality that no human being ever had to confront. Someone else hadn't just taken her job or, her home. They had literally lived her exact life.
So, to understand how this impossible scenario even happened, we have to look at the inciting incident. Part 1. The 70-year leap and the harsh reality of relativistic travel. 70. That is how many years passed on Earth. See, Captain Voss had been commanding the Aether, testing out this prototype warp-skip drive around Proxima Centauri. For her, according to her mission logs and her own biological aging, it was a 7-year trip. Just 7 years. But back on Earth, time moved vastly differently. Imagine going to sleep and waking up to find everyone you know is a senior citizen, or just gone. The worst-case pre-launch models had actually estimated these extreme time dilation effects, but most people dismissed them as statistical noise. Actually, scratch that, they completely ignored them. Yet the numbers were totally real. By the time her ship settled onto the launch pad, the world had fundamentally transformed. Which brings us to the shock of the landing itself. Part 2, Project Mirror revealed, and the absolute stunner of a contingency plan.
Now, what's really interesting here is the sheer contrast. When the Aether's airlock cycled open, Elara stepped out expecting some serious culture shock. But instead, she's greeted by a delegation that included a 55-year-old woman in a tailored navy dress who stepped right forward and said, "Hello, Elara. I'm President Elara Voss." On one hand, we have our original Captain Elara Voss, biologically 34 years old, shaped by 7 years in the centrifuge routines of a spaceship. On the other hand, President Elara Voss. When the original planners realized that extreme time dilation was super likely, they activated a highly classified contingency called Project Mirror. A clone of Elara, grown from cells harvested before launch, was decanted at age 22. She was given Elara's memories right up to launch day and inserted into her life. The goal was to ensure continuity for the mission's funding and data. But she didn't just sit around in a lab waiting, she lived. She navigated a climate collapse, she married a brilliant climate engineer named Dr. Amara Singh, had kids, and, oh yeah, just casually became the president of Earth.
Let's put this timeline into perspective to truly grasp how disorienting this was for Elara. She launched in 2028. By 2044, 16 years later, her original boyfriend, Michael, tragically died in a shuttle accident. But original Elara wouldn't even know this until she returned in 2098. 70 years gone in a flash for her. Her parents had passed away, her brother had grandchildren. The original Elara had basically become a living relic of 2028 in a world that had completely moved on without her.
And this unprecedented situation sparked an absolutely massive legal and historical crisis. Section 3. The Voss question. Who is the real Elara?
Think about this dilemma for a second. It sparked this incredible philosophical debate. Does a clone who actually lived the life, or the original who retained unbroken continuity of consciousness, hold the true identity? Talk shows were debating this around the clock. Did the returned Elara even have rights to her own identity? The clone had the lived experience, the family, the political legacy. But the original had the unbroken continuity of mind from birth. It is a profoundly heavy, complicated question.
And the clone's legacy was immense. We're talking world-saving stuff. President Voss had led humanity through the absolute worst of a climate collapse, using geoengineering and huge fusion breakthroughs. She championed building orbital cities and a permanent base on Mars. She had done exactly what Project Mirror hoped she would do. She became what the original Elara might have become, or Honestly, perhaps even better. Because of this monumental progress, the original Captain Voss felt completely alienated, kind of like a ghost haunting a thriving future she had zero part in building.
But, a ghost with a face that famous doesn't stay hidden forever. Let's look at the boiling point, 6 months after Elara's return. The continuity crisis and a nation divided.
The socio-political stakes quickly escalated into a full-blown national security threat. A faction within the military, known as the Continuity First movement, attempted to declare the original returned Elara as the legitimate heir to the Voss legacy. They wanted to install her as a symbolic co-president, effectively trying to use her to undermine what they were calling the clone regime. At the same time, classified documents were leaked questioning the legality of the entire clone program under international law. Protests erupted outside the Capitol and things got violent fast. So Captain Voss had to sit in a safe house and watch her own face being used on both sides of a violent ideological war. You had President Voss addressing the nation on TV, while demonstrators held up the younger captain's picture in the streets, calling her the real Elara. Even the president's own daughter, Congresswoman Sophia, viewed the original Elara as a direct threat to everything their family had built.
Recognizing that just her mere existence was tearing the world apart, Captain Voss made a definitive choice. Which brings us to the climax of this explainer, reclaiming a name, and the historic Rose Garden press conference.
The entire world watched with bated breath as both Elara stood at separate podiums to address a deeply divided globe. Captain Voss steps up to the microphone, her voice steadying, and she speaks these exact words. "I want the right to exist as myself, not as a historical footnote or a political weapon, and I want to go to the stars again, not as a symbol, but as an explorer." It was just a breathtaking moment. She actively rejected the presidency. She absolutely refused to erase 70 years of progress or tear down her clone's family. Instead, she chose to forge a completely new, unburdened identity for herself.
And it's just such a beautiful resolution, because this choice paved the way for both women to move forward. President Voss immediately supported Captain Voss's petition for legal recognition as a distinct individual, and announced she wouldn't seek re-election, stepping away to allow new leadership to take over. The conflict resolved into two very distinct paths. First, Captain Voss launched on the Aether 2, bound for the outer Oort cloud. And this time, she was on a mission designed for round-trip communication, so she would actually age with the Earth. Second, President Voss retired to a quiet, private life in New Zealand, where she focused on writing her memoirs and spending time with her grandchildren.
Ultimately, this is a story about Section 6, two kinds of explorers, sky and ground.
Before parting ways, the two women actually spend some quiet time together. The president even gave the captain her personal, encrypted journal. It contained every major decision, every doubt of the last 70 years, not for Elara to copy, but just to understand. From that point on, the original Elara never used the word clone ever again. They simply called each other sister. Decades later, in the year 2124, we see just how deep that sisterhood really ran. Elara the Explorer, now 60 years old and stationed out on the Helios outpost, received a digital letter relayed all the way from Earth. Her sister wrote about her great-grandchildren and included this incredibly touching reflection. "We were always going to change the world. I just did it from the ground. You did it from the sky. Maybe that's how it was always meant to be." Captain Voss had lost 70 years of time, but she gained a sister, and she gained an entire universe to explore. So I want to leave you with this really profound thought to chew on. If someone else successfully lived out your potential, what new path would you choose to forge? Captain Elara Voss chose to look forward, flat out refusing to let the ghosts of a stolen past anchor her down. It's a real testament to the unyielding human need to reach further, no matter what timeline we happen to find ourselves in. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring.